How's it going, guys? I'm Jeff. This is my lovely wife, Alyssa. Welcome to the Real Life Podcast. This is our very, very first, not first interview on our podcast in general, but our first one on the Real Life Podcast with like a certain format and a certain thing. We're very, very excited. Screen. Yes, yeah, new screen, new video, new me, new us. Very excited. Before we introduced our guest, just a couple quick things. Like we said, this is our first interview. And you guys have actually asked for this. You guys have asked that we would talk to our friends more, people that inspire us more. So clearly you are done hearing from us and you are over us. You just like talk to more people besides you guys. Probably more sick of me than you for sure. And we're really excited. And so this is how we're going to do it. Essentially, there's a lot of people in the influencer space, author space, podcast space, but we are specifically, at least for this first season of interviews, only picking people that inspire us in a very specific area or that we very much enjoy following online. And I was thinking about today how, this is almost our excuse to talk to people we want to talk to. And it's weird to just DM people and say, hey, can we have an hour phone call just to learn about life? Because I love people and I think people are really interesting. But if all of a sudden you record it, it's not weird, which should make it more weird that you're recording a call between you two. But if you record it and call it a podcast, it's not weird. So that's exactly what we're doing today. And we're very excited.
It's basically an excuse to hang out with all of our like Instagram crushes.
Yes, exactly. So today we are interviewing Myquillyn, the nester from The Nesting Place. That's a lot of nesting, but I'm very excited to talk about that. She is incredible, you guys. And a couple things before we introduce her, because she's not going to say all the things that we want her to say because she's probably very humble and loves the Lord. And so here's the thing. I don't even know how I would explain how, I started following you years ago, and so did Alyssa. Mm-hmm. And the main thing is I feel like you give people such permission to enjoy their home, love their home, have tools and resources for the home that is non-Pinteresty shameful, which is so sadly very common in today's culture. That you actually say the Lord has you in whatever place or apartment or rental or dorm room that he has you in. Make it a really sacred, beautiful, and amazing space. And so we absolutely love that about you and what you're doing with your vocation. And before we say hi, I know Alyssa wanted to gush a little bit about you and say a couple things, and then you can ask the first question that you're going to ask too.
Okay. Well, no, I think it's such an honor to talk to you today. And I remember like 3 or 4 years ago, Jeff and I had moved to Maui, and we had bought our first home, and I had bought your book, The Nesting Place. And it was so encouraging to me because here I am setting up this new home, and I'm really excited about it, but it's so easy to get the pressure of like it has to be perfect or it has to look like the way I want it to look on Instagram and all my dream posts. Mm-hmm. And then reading your book, it just breathes so much life into, we're created to make beauty and to nest and to make our homes a really special place, but it's more about the people in it and the heartbeat behind it and what is your family about, and to make your home what your family, that reflects your family. And that may not be every post, Pinterest you have or Instagram that you look at. And so I just loved that book. But it's so funny. Jeff and I, before we hopped on the podcast, I had to practice your name because you know how like you follow people on Instagram and you call them by their handle. So I just always called you the Nester. Like, oh yeah, the Nester. Or I remember this really funny story. Our friends, they came to visit before they moved out, and they met my parents, and my parents' last name is Fenton.
And then her mom's name is Susie. Her dad's name is Ken. So KS is their first initials.
Yeah. And so they met them. And you know, when you meet people, you never really like introduce yourself by your last name. So it's just Ken and Susie. And so then they moved back to LA, and they were following my mom on Instagram, and her handle is Fenton KS.
Fenton for Ken and Susie.
Yeah, for Ken and Susie, but they didn't know it was for Ken and Susie, so they thought their last name was Fintox. So every time we would talk to them, they're like, "Oh, how are your parents? How are the Fintox doing?
How are the Fintox doing?" We're like, who's that?
I know. And so anyway, so I keep thinking like, "Oh, the Nester." I'm like, "Oh, Myquillyn, I have to call you by your name," which I love your name. It's very unique too. How did your parents come up with Myquillyn?
Well, I wish I had a really fantastic exotic story for my name. We're hippies from Indiana, and my mom made up the name before she met my dad. And it's just a weird name with a Q in it, which is exactly why I go by the Nester online, because you really can't look at it and pronounce it. And so it's kind of a big mess. And now, my dad calls me the Nester sometimes, and I'm like, I don't know that that's fair. I'm just not sure.
Yeah, exactly. He's the one that gave you your name.
You've
and then
had years of practice.
Exactly. Okay, well, hey, we're so excited to have you. So thank you for being on. It's a huge honor.
Mm-hmm. Right. So, go ahead.
I just said I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, we're really excited. So we like to start with a couple interesting rapid fire questions. Personally, I don't really love the who are you? Where are you from? How many kids do you have? Where do you live? Blah, blah, blah. But that's not interesting, and people can find that out in 5 seconds on Instagram. So our first 4 questions, you can answer them fairly quick if you want, and then we'll get into really what we really want to talk about, which is, of course, nesting place, and then for specifically Cozy Minimalist Home, which is your new book coming out. You clearly have a gift talking about home, and we have benefited so much from it. We want our audience to benefit from that, and that'll be the main part of some of our questions. But for some of the fun rapid fire questions, the first one is, what's your, this one we don't have to do the interview if you just actually tell us the answer, because we'll know everything about you. And that is, what's your Enneagram number? Because you literally don't have to do an Enneagram. You don't even have to do an interview if you just tell us your number, because we know everything about you in that moment. Or do you hate it? Or do you not really know much about it? So that would be the first one. What's your Enneagram number?
I'm a 5.
Oh. So we're kind of like, I consider 5s and 8s cousins. I'm an 8. And 8s and 5s are cousins because you go to 5, 8s go to 5, and then also very much care about information and research and introversion. So that's really funny. And Alyssa is?
I'm a 9.
Is a 9. Someone yesterday DM'd us because we talk about the Enneagram off the cuff. We don't do a ton of stuff on it. We just say oh, that's an 8. We just make comments. And someone was like, I heard you on a podcast say that you were an 8 and Alyssa was a 9. Is that a physical beauty standard? And I was like, yes. My wife's a 9. 10 and I'm an 8. They just were confused. Okay. Second question. When you die, we're getting real already. When you die, what do you hope that they say at your funeral, and platitudes and generalities do not count?
Gosh.
Deep question.
My gosh. Again, I'm a 5. I will tell you the answer to this next week.
That's fair. That's fair.
True.
You can come out of that one as a 5. 5s can do that. Okay. Number 3, going way lower bar. What's your Starbucks order?
It is always an iced grande almond milk latte with 2 stevia.
Oh, healthy.
That is pretty, yeah. That is good.
Yeah.
So last rapid fire starter question, and then you can read the first main question.
Okay.
And the last one is, what was your favorite 90s jam, aka your favorite song you can remember from the 90s? Whatever era you would consider yourself in, what song would that be?
Well, how old were you in the 90s?
Are you allowed to ask that?
I'm older than you guys. I graduated from high school in 92. So, anything from
Okay.
Also, no, the 90s, yeah, the 90s
That
would
was
have been,
your prime time.
Yep.
Well, for music.
Yeah, I feel like young adulthood, high school, and college is definitely that. So what would you say that you said NSYNC?
I said anything from InXS, or I love country, like Alan Jackson, anything from Alan Jackson.
Oh, I feel like that's a little, that's good.
Well,
that's
Indiana.
Good. Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll go ahead and with that. And so we'll jump into it now and talk about what we really wanted to talk to you about. And that is, you are such an expert, such a voice on home. And so you can go ahead with the first question if you want.
Okay. What's the biggest or most common mistake you see a lot of people make around the home, and what it can do or how you believe in it? Or maybe what's one of the most pivotal truths you think people need to make for the home to come alive?
If you can't tell, I'm really wordy and I wrote the questions.
I know, I'm struggling over that one.
Essentially, what's the biggest mistake you think people make with home, and how they believe in it, how they see it? Or you can answer the flip of that, is what's the big truth you think that really radicalizes and changes people's view of home?
Well, okay, I'm going to answer it philosophically, and then I'm going to do an actionable thing. The biggest mistake we make when it comes to our home, is we wait on the next house. We put off making the home that we're currently in better, prettier, a home that we want to come home to, a place we want to invite people to. We keep putting things off to the next house. And when I think about that, I have to remind myself that compared to my last house, this is my next house. Now, also, I'm going to answer it applicable, when you're actually making decisions in your home about stuff. The thing that we do wrong the most when it comes to actually making design decisions or just decorating choices in our house is, we buy everything too small, from lamps to rugs to tchotchkes to.
Oh, that's really good, applicable.
Yep, art, wall art, everything. We go small when we should go a lot bigger. So there you have it.
I actually have done that
That's
before.
a really
where I've
good
like,
design.
yeah, come home with a rug or something like that, and I'm the guy that tries to force it. Like, no, it looks fine, and then Alyssa's like, that doesn't look fine. It looks puny over there in the corner. Rugs, people do that with a lot, and I'm bad with that too. You actually have to get a giant rug to really appropriately cover what you want to cover, and that's a really good question, or I mean, a really good answer. Okay, number 2. And I'm really interested in this one because we actually get this question a lot that I feel like sometimes I don't know exactly how to answer as well. We don't strictly have a young adult audience, but I would say that's certainly a very much one of the bullseyes of our audience is young adult and a little higher than that, maybe like I'd say 25 to 35. Young families, new families, but even below that is a lot of college students and dorms, etc. So I'd love to hear you talk about how or why it's important. And we get this question a lot because people see us post about family and the home and all these things, but that's very much the traditional nuclear model, but everyone lives in a dwelling. So if you're not like this family with you where you own your own home or you rent your own home, etc., if you're a college student in a dorm or you're single and you live with roommates, why is it important and how can you still maybe make that a home when you're basically not to that like, white picket fence, I have the family and the kids vibe yet?
Well, I think all of us have this ideal version of how we want to use our home, whether for some of us in the season of life, it's like a haven, like a safe, comfy place to come back to and find actual real rest and relaxation, or maybe it's a place to have people over. Whatever that ideal version of home and how we want to use home and what our purpose is, a lot of us put that off for later or putting that off, not thinking about how I can use that right now in my own situation. And so, yeah, okay, my 7:30 brain is coming through, y'all.
That is amazing. No, that is actually incredible though. I've never actually thought about that of like we almost wait till we reach the level of perfection to apply it rather than like that vision and stirring in your heart you can do in the dorm room. You can do in your, the house with roommates, or you can do whatever. Like if your vision for your home is an extreme level of hospitality of like you want to be the family that has people over and has your neighbors over, etc. Well, then in the dorm room, have the person across the hall over and hang out and talk or do homework together or whatever. That's really insightful. Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah. Well, I just was thinking, so in Hawaii, well, in Maui particularly, we have a lot of people live in things called ohanas. So it's kind of like a mother-in-law home.
Yeah,
it's like
homes.
500 square feet. A lot of newlyweds live there. My parents live in one. We've had families with 2 kids live in one. And it's hard to, if you have a dream of hosting people, to be like, okay, and when I get to a bigger home, I'll host people. And so even here, even when, you are married or you do have a family, I think that can still be a temptation of the next home or when it gets bigger or have more space. And so I love that truth applies to multiple seasons of life of just how can we make it work with what God has already given us.
Yeah, that's super good. Okay, I want to talk about your new book, Cozy Minimalist Home. Am I saying that right?
You are.
Okay, so we're super excited. I think I'm on some type of list to get the book because it's with Nelson, right?
It's with Zondervan.
Zondervan, that's me. HarperCollins, Christian Publishing. Yeah. Sorry, we're like competitors, but brothers, sisters. I don't know how that works. But we're on some list to get in, so we're like stoked because we love. The nesting place was like one of those. It's rare to get a book. You create the books that you actually want to like put out on display. When like our books, like they would like
read.
Yeah, and read. Our books, like they're just normal paper. It's like they would second as like kindling for fire or something if someone needs, as if in the apocalypse. So when yours is awesome, and so we're really excited to get it. But my question is, and we kind of talked about this on email, but I'd love to hear you expand on it. Is when people hear minimalism, I think a lot of times we hear super cold, super industrial, super maybe even modern, whatever. That they like. I think we have a lot of thoughts about minimalism that aren't at the heart of minimalism. It's just maybe one expression of that. And so I'd love to hear you talk about why it's important, what it truly is, and then how that balance we talked about in email of like minimalism and abundance can actually go hand in hand. I think that's really what it's about. And I think that's a distinction people don't make. So I'd love to hear maybe your thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, when you think about the word minimal, it really just means enough to meet a goal, which is a great thing. Like that's a wonderful thing. And I know for me, for a long time, when I heard the word minimalism or minimal, I had a negative connotation. I kind of stereotyped it and even stereotyped minimalists themselves, like, oh, it's a bachelor living in a loft with a black leather and no
Totally.
rug, wearing a uniform. It's fun. I think the idea of minimalism and simplicity intrigues a lot of us, but then we also feel like, well, that's not for me because I have a really messy life and a family, and, you know, we have hockey equipment and homework, and so that's unreachable, and I can't have that. So we feel like we have to choose either messiness or minimalism, where I really think the simplicity movement and the minimal movement and the idea of having just enough in certain areas can be a gift that we give to ourselves, and can be a really wonderful thing in our home to have those areas that are simple. But we're humans, and there's sometimes in some cases where we need to have abundance. And so that's where that coziness, welcoming factor comes in. Because I know that's kind of what held me back. I would look at these beautiful minimalist blogs and kind of secretly think, oh, I wish I was single so I could have like this empty no time to clean. But as I would look at those blogs, I would be like wrapped up in my comfy sofa with my throw and my 3 pillows behind me on my lap. And, you know, I'm like, well, I want this warm, comforting, I want some layers. I want a throw pillow in my house. So I can't be minimalist, but I think that's not true. We can find this middle ground where we can take what's good from the minimalist and minimal movement, and then take these lovely, cozy, warm, inviting things and have them both represented in our home in a way that serves our family the best.
That's really good. What would you say one tip is then for the coziness? How do you make a home cozier? I feel like that's a fun question. Besides the throw blankets and the pillows, Alyssa's the coziest person there is. She literally wants to wear 7 blankets, 9 pillows, and just like, I'm like, where are you? I have to literally like dig in there. Like, where are you on the couch?
Jeff gets so frustrated with how many pillows I love on the couch. And I'm I could even do more.
No, it's brutal. But yeah, so what would you say is like a cozy tip, or how can you make that home, and maybe why it's important? I think talk about too, like it's really important to be inviting too. But yeah, what would you say is one tip?
Right. Well, I mean, I hate to break it to you, but the tip is the throw pillows, the rug, and the soft, cozy things. Because think about it, like, okay, if you have a guest room and you're having guests over, and if you're a minimalist and to the letter, like, okay, I'm going to have the least amount of things I can get by with. So I have a mattress in this room and sheets and maybe a lamp. But as you add those cozifiers, you think about, like, when they put their toes out of the bed onto the floor, you want them to have something cushy, and you want them to have, obviously, privacy, but like maybe some beautiful window coverings on the window and a cushy towel and a couple extra blankets. So it's those extra humanizing things that make it cozy. But that's the thing, and that's what makes it tricky. There's not like a rule, like, oh, to add coziness, you do 1, 2, 3. You get to decide that, but also you get to decide that.
Yeah, it's true. That's true. I never thought about that. That's good. I'll ask the next one, and then I was going to say, do you want to pick from the list?
Just along this line, I just am thinking, so I love making a home, and I also love shopping, if I can say that. So how do you, as a woman, and this applies to men too, but as you're creating your home, what are things that you've learned or that you would say to women who maybe struggle more with like the consumerism or wanting to shop and find special things for your home, but also being minimal and also not like always being a consumer, but like creating? And does that make sense? Kind of just like not being, I don't know how to say that exactly.
You're saying like maybe how do you shop, or how do you still enjoy it as a gift, etc., but not be caught up in the world's version of like whatever, retail therapy and all those versions.
Yes,
or what's
exactly.
What's the hilarious movie we love? Shopaholic?
Shopaholic.
That's an awesome movie. But yeah, but what would you say?
Like, is there anything that, and I don't know if your new book talks about that, but is there anything that you would just say on that topic to women, especially?
Well, I know I still struggle with that because I love beautiful tchotchkes more than anyone in the world. I love everything at Target. It's all gorgeous.
Yeah, right?
But I also realize that I love a cleared off counter, and I love a table that's ready for me to put a puzzle down or homework or dinner or laundry or whatever that is. And I almost had to get to the point where I like cried out for, I've got to have some space in my life. And once you allow for some empty space, some margin in your home, almost like a sabbatical on your wall or on your mantle, and you give yourself some white space, that was the trigger for me to be like, oh, I like this, and I don't want to wreck it up. And so I think almost experimenting with a little bit less on your surfaces, like just pick one surface per room and clear it off, even up beautiful decorative things, and see how that feels. And for me, that was the thing that like was the change, was seeing how great those surfaces would serve me with less. And now I don't want to wreck it up even with super cute stuff.
That's super
really
good. It's funny because I'm very much like that, where I get zen's the wrong word. I feel very at peace when
things are in order.
Things are very in order, and usually leaning on the spectrum of just like empty or gone, or like a clear counter is my love language. That is like, give me a clear, like, what? Why do we have 19 different kitchen appliances? Like, I didn't even know this existed, right? Clearly people made bread 100 years ago and they figured it out. So
you should. Our talks about our kids' toys are real fun.
Oh yeah, the kids' toys ones. Which we are both pretty minimalist on the toys, but I'm very, so that's a fun conversation. I'm like, they only need a stick
or clothes,
and they will be okay. But yeah, what was I going to say with that? I was going to say, no, I think that's really insightful. I think that people like, well, functionality, I think too, is what you just mentioned, which I think to be able to make those go hand in hand, it's one or the other, isn't just so that they look pretty or even that it gives you peace. But at the end of the day, I really love that you said like, so that things are ready to be functional actually for like doing life. I think sometimes the bad ideal of home is to have a home that has to be tiptoed in. Like, to me, that's actually one of the worst homes. If a home creates a culture that has to be tiptoed in, that's bad. And so for me, we try to set that culture. And for us, we try to set that culture with the kids where it's like, we are very intentional early, and you actually have to practice it as a parent, especially with toddlers. Like, okay, if they break something, I need to have this canned response in my head. Like, maybe that was an accident. Maybe we can learn from that. But at the end of the day, like, that was like, you're okay. And that's all that matters. And it's okay that broke, or it's okay that got Sharpie on it. And we're pretty radical actually with that belief that like, that it's weird too, because we think that like, oh, if we just let them do whatever, then they'll go crazy. But it weirdly almost pulls them back in. They really understand then the like, oh, this is a space that I get to have fun in and laugh in and play in. But I obviously don't want things to break, etc. And so I think, yeah, being functional. Maybe talk about that for a second. What are your biggest tips, or how have you? Because your kids are towards the end, right? Like 13, 15, 18, something like that.
Yeah, they're like 21, 18, and 17. But we were the same. We were
all boys too, right?
All boys. My kids played house. They rode tricycles. They did rollerblades in the house. They didn't tear it up. We were super respectful, but
totally.
It was a place of play, like a super safe place to have fun in. They jumped on the sofa, not tearing it up, but we made sofa forks and all of those things because we believe that home is there to serve people, not the other way around.
That's so good. That's so good. And so I love that too. So maybe this will, and then you pick a question from 5 through 8, but this one actually ties into, then let's talk a little bit more about family, because if people listening, and if you've listened before, we love talking about family. For us, we don't talk to just families. Single people listen, old, young, etc. But definitely there's a lot of people that really, that we love talking about family, and they love us asking other people about family. And so one question that I like to ask is, what's a favorite family tradition in your guys' family? And I love hearing, and I'm really excited to hear now, knowing your kids' age, because you can, possibly have a tradition that's already 20 years old, 15 years old, etc. And we only have traditions that are, 4 years old. So looking back, with your almost all your kids kind of out of the, almost into adulthood, what would you say is maybe one or two of your guys' favorite family traditions? And then one step farther, what do you think that actually did for you? What do you think was actually important about that tradition?
Well, when they were younger, our tradition was to meet at the top of the stairs every night, and we would, tell the good parts of our day, the bad parts of our day, pray,
cool.
Go to bed. So we called it top of the stairs. We would just holler, top of the stairs, and they would all get there. But we moved a lot, and we didn't always have stairs. But the other tradition that we still do is a Christmas tradition, and that is we save all our change, throughout the year, as most of us do. And on Christmas Eve, we go and cash it all out at the grocery store. We go to church, and then we go to Waffle House, and we all order, and we leave all the extra change for the tip, but we walk out the door, but we get to watch, because you guys have Waffle Houses in Hawaii, right?
We don't, and we don't even have them in Washington. But I'm obsessed. Being on the speaking author tour vibe, like that
just
is the place.
All about
it's
it.
the only place open after you speak. And Waffle House is insane. I don't know how people even are Christian in the West Coast without Waffle House. Like, it's the best food in the world.
Is it the one where there's
it's 70 cents. There's a layer of grease on the
floor
where you just skate in and out. Oh, literally, Waffle House is like my spirit animal restaurant. Like, if I was a restaurant, I would be Waffle House. It's so good. It's so good and so gnarly and dirty and amazing. And they must have got the biggest tip ever because your whole meal probably costs $7 for a family of 5. But
and then you walk out, the waffle is all glass, so it's all windows.
Yeah.
So you get to leave. You get to leave it like anonymously, but then you're sitting in the car and you get to watch their reaction, which is super
That's
fun.
cool. And you guys do that every year?
We do it every year. Yeah.
That is cool. That is really cool.
That.
Oh, I love traditions are like one of my favorite things because I feel like those are the things that like ritual, either yearly, weekly, or monthly. It just gives you these like little anchor points and flag points where then if you like, you want to do traditions in a way where when they stop, or if you stop doing them, or if something you move or whatever, then it's like, you've done your job right if they get to if they get to the top of the stairs and it makes them think about it, or if they get to a Waffle House and they think about it. Like that's the stuff that makes things really powerful, I think, in a family, is if you're putting these like flag points and almost memory anchors in their life towards service, towards love, towards etc. But yeah, that's really good. I
love that. Can I go a little off script?
Yeah, no, go whatever.
Okay.
Go wherever. Talk about whatever, do whatever.
I just was thinking, as a mom of 3, is there anything that you would, looking back when your kids were really young, of just like what you would say to moms that are balancing creating a home and keeping up your home, but also having your kids and wanting to be intentional with them? Is there anything that you would say in that space?
I hope this speaks to what you're asking. I would say, let your kids be messy. Let them have a place to be super creative and a place that you don't have to clean up every night. And I would say, let your kids be bored and have room for boredom and them figuring out and having to be creative and not always supplying or feeling like you have to, schedule something or play or feel bad if they're bored. I think boredom is such a gift for our kids because that's where they get creative.
That is so. Let's talk then about your nickname. Your nickname, you told me, was the Noach. Is that, am I pronouncing that right? Because it's basically you coach people how to say no. Is that what I'm hearing, or that you're a leader in in telling people how to say no? Is that why it's called that?
Yeah, no coach, kind of. That's what
it's amazing, and we are obsessed with that. If anyone listens to our podcast, they know we are insanely militaristic about like margin, space, boredom. And just say no, because we have more opportunities to say yes more than ever in 2018. And so it's just pure math where you just have to actually say no more then, because there's more opportunities to say yes if you actually still want your time to count on the things that matter. So so one question I'd have for you then is, how did you do that with the kids being older? Because we get pushback on this sometimes, and totally appropriate pushback of like, we write about it, we talk about it, but then people are like, well, yeah, that's easy for you guys because you guys have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, which totally, toddlers are very much just they have to just do what you're doing. You can you dictate that life, and they just don't know any better, and like they're just coming along for the ride. And so I get that, and they're not in sports, and they're not in recitals and dance, etc. So maybe talking when they're older, how have you maybe give us some tips or some processes, or how you guys walked through that with 3 boys who I'm guessing maybe sports were involved. They got friends, there's parties, car, their driver's license, etc. All these things. How did you then walk through the process of no and margin and space to kind of protect I'm guessing you're doing this to protect what's most important, which is kind of family time and building that. But yeah, what would you say to that?
Well, I think that it happens naturally. Chad and my husband he's a 9 and he's a major extrovert, but we don't go out and do a lot of stuff. We are home a lot, and our kids grew up on the weekends being home every night, on the weeknights being home. They were in hockey for a few years, but other than that, we didn't really go to church during the week. We didn't have extracurricular activities. Chad was home. If he was working, he homeschooled them some of the time. We are just like a major homebody family. And all my kids can drive now. They all have their own cars. They can, do their own life. But a lot of them just kind of developed home habits. So one of my boys taught himself how to play the piano. So that's kind of what he does on the side.
Wow.
They fix cars. They do that kind of thing. They have neighbor kids that live close. But we have a family of homebodies. And I don't know if that's maybe because partly personalities, but I think it's just partly that's how Chad and I, we just like being home and we like being together. And I think that they learned that that's okay. And they don't have to be gone all the time and always going. So
how did you do that in the sense of, or maybe say, when was the hardest season for that? How did you feel like you protected against that? And then what do you feel like it actually did for your family now that you're pretty much at the finish line in the sense of them, being out of the home soon? How did, looking back, what do you feel like it actually did for your family to be the Noach?
Yeah. Well, we had a hard hockey season where 2 of my boys were on a travel team, and it killed us all. And they were the ones that said, like, no more. We cannot keep doing it. You're basically on call every weekend to travel to another state as a family of 5 so that they could play 3 games on a weekend, which is exhausting. We had a goalie. We had, one just skating around, and they would come back exhausted. And we just thought, that is not what sport is supposed to be for our kids to come home and be exhausted and have practice 3 nights a week and then scramble to do their homework. Like, this is not what life is. And we never want our kids to feel like that. So we gave them permission so they could be done with hockey if they wanted, and they can just go play scrimmage games. And that's what they do now. So they didn't play organized sports once they got kind of burnt out and voiced to us, we don't like this. We don't want to keep doing this. Now, I think so, like, please, we love it. And, we could see them balancing and being able to get their homework done and have free time. Like, they have to come home and have some free time. They cannot be at school all day and then come home and do homework or go to a job and do sports. Like, I do not want to live my adult life like that. And I cannot allow my boys to live their high school, junior high, college life like that.
Yeah, I think
so good.
I think people don't. There's a weird American idolatrous lie that believes, like, if you actually have space and margin, you're doing something wrong. You're wasting your life. You're wasting your time. You're wasting your talents. When in fact, I think it's the actual opposite. I think busyness is the actual definition of waste. Like, if you actually think of waste, just like the crap that falls off things and stuff like that you produce in your life, you're producing a wasteful life by being extra busy usually, because it's not that meaningful and it's not that full of depth and richness. And sports are amazing and incredible. And I played baseball my whole life all the way through college, but we do have to face up with the fact that it is a machine in America, especially once you get to select level. Travel select level is like, that is almost a god in some sense that has its own particular set of altars and worships, behaviors. And I do know people who can do that without kind of getting sucked into the machine. But I also think most people get sucked into the machine at the higher levels. Because the question you have to ask is just, what's kind of just running our week? Like, is Jesus running our week? Is is the pace of the Lord running our week? Like, does our family running our week? Or is it literally just like a shuttle van to practice in games? Like, and if that's kind of the thing that's getting all your time, talents, and energy, by the scripture's definition, that's called a false god. And so, now, of course, like I said, you can still play sports, and I did, but it's just, I don't think we reckon with the fact that is a behemoth beast of a machine. Once you get up to the really high levels where it actually is demanding all your time, all your energy, if you want to take it really serious. And I think God actually gives people that call sometimes to actually say, like, yeah, you have this skill, you have this talent, and you will be able to go be a light, whether in the NFL or in college sports. And I hope that those people have a really good, base with that to be able to be safe and secure in that. But yeah, we don't wrestle with the tension there enough that it's not inherently wrong, but it does have some serious pull. So were you going to add something?
No, I just was thinking as we're talking, it's so refreshing to sit and hear you talk about being a mom and the home. I feel like you just have so much grace, and even the hockey experience, like, you knew the heartbeat of your children and the heartbeat of your home, and there was grace. You didn't feel the pressure to push your kids or to make them look like what society tells us we should do as moms or what our kids should be doing. And so I feel like you have such a voice in our culture of just grace, and grace on your home, and grace with you as a mom, and grace with your kids and whatever your family is. And I think that's so refreshing. Totally.
So, okay, let's end with a couple. They're not super rapid fire. They're like medium rapid fire, where you can probably answer these pretty fast.
Remember, she's a 5, babe.
I know. I'll keep. I won't ask. No more funeral questions. I promise. Okay. This one's kind of fun. If there were actually 26 hours in a day, what would you do more of? So kind of the thing that either you don't think you have enough time, or that you struggle to kind of get enough time out of the day for, or something that you love so much that you would love to give those extra 2 hours to every day.
Oh, I would float in the pool or take a longer bath or pet my cats more.
I love that.
Guys, follow her on Instagram. Is it just at the Nester?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, her pool and like her backyard and all, it is sick. It is so tight. It is awesome. And then, yeah.
Is it still hot there right now to use the pool?
Yeah, I got the pool the other day. So it's been great.
That's incredible.
Oh, so nice.
That's a good answer. What are the top 3 things you are loving right now that are free?
Free?
Just could be like something you're consuming like a podcast. It could just be like, something that's part of your life, or even just could be something that's a thought. So it has nothing to do even with a product, but just, some things that you're doing or loving right now that are free.
Okay. Number 1, the Next Right Thing podcast I am in love with. Disclaimer, it's my sister, Emily P. Freeman, but it's...
That's your sister?
You didn't know that?
Okay, I've
knew that.
I've seen her online and stuff, and you guys are like twins, and I just kind of thought, oh, that's
You didn't
so
know
strange.
they were sisters?
Well, they don't have the same last name, which obviously makes sense, but
Yeah,
oh wow, mind blown. Okay, so what's it called? Next Right Thing podcast.
The Next Right Thing.
I'm gonna check that out, and she hosts it.
10 minutes. So it's super quick, once a week, and it like changes my whole presence. And it's about making decisions, but it's so much deeper than that. It's so good.
That's cool.
Yeah. So okay, what else is free? Like just sunshine. Like I love summer, and I love fall decor. Don't get me wrong. I love decorating fall, but it's always depressing to me this time of year because it's the end of summer. So like sunlight, I'm soaking up all of the sunlight I can get because I really miss natural light in the winter.
Mm-hmm.
That is good.
Where do you guys live again?
We live in North Carolina, so
North
it's not
Carolina,
like we don't get sun in the winter, but it gets dark at 5:30, and I love every season, but summer is just my favorite.
Totally. Mm-hmm.
Do you have a third thing, or is that it?
That's it. That's all I can think of. I'll tell you another
Those
one.
are good. But I'm with you though. I actually summer, and I actually love winter. I don't fall to me is like, the Lord was kind of taking a nap when he made that season.
What? I love fall.
Nah, I'm not about that. Like the whole pumpkin spice stuff and the browns and the oranges and the yellows are so gross. Like I don't want, who cares? That is the worst color palette of all time. Browns and yellows and oranges. Like
That's
I'm
why
good.
you gotta go cream.
No, I'm good.
I love
So,
that challenge.
Yeah.
Guys, it must be expected that for our first kind of full interview on the Real Life Podcast, there would be some technical difficulty, but it was neither of our faults. I'm pretty good with tech. And even, Myquillyn, it wasn't her fault. It sounds like she just emailed us and said that
Her internet just went out.
some storm happened in the internet.
Oh, there's a storm.
Yeah, or something in the internet. So we pray she's okay.
Didn't they just have a hurricane?
Well, yeah, that stuff was kind of, that was a little sketch a couple weeks ago. But this, I think she meant was like
Not a
the wind was
hurricane.
blowing or something, and maybe an electrical line went down or something. Guys, we hope this was encouraging to you. One quick, what did you think was kind of your favorite part, or what really stood out to you as why you enjoyed that and what she said?
Well, even, I think I said it, but I just loved how she was so full of grace. And, as women, I think I shouldn't say that because that might be stereotypical, but a lot of women love making a space, a home, and nesting and creating beauty. And then when you become a mom, it's like, how do I create a place of rest and a place of fun for my family, but also want it to look, a lot of us, like, we want it to look away. And even the other night, my friend was saying, like, I realized I spend a lot of time cleaning my home. And and I just love what she was saying and how she really is just so grace-filled of, like, having a space that you don't have to clean up every day, or letting your kids be kids. And even with the family thing with the hockey, just like, hey, this isn't what I want for my family. This isn't, my kids can do it. They're handling it fine, but this isn't what we want for our family. So we're going to step back and look different from what most of our other friends are doing, or other families around us, what culture says. And we're going to do us, and we're going to leave space and margin. And I think that's such a beautiful thing. And I think, the word minimalism, I tend to cringe at, because that's just not my, I don't know. I probably struggle with consumerism, but I also I like coziness. I like all these things. But I think what she's getting at the heart of is just creating space and margin for you to rest and to be bored so you can create and to have family time. And I think I really look up to her just from the interview we were hearing about just how she and her husband created a space that made the kids want to come back home or want to be at home. And obviously there's different personalities, and there's different things that God calls your family to, and sometimes it is to be involved in different things. But I think at the end of the day, if your kids like come back home and they want to be home at some point, I think that's a real testament to you as parents, to you as a mom, maybe, especially just that like you're creating a space. And I think, I was thinking about this today, like, what do I want to be known for? And I think I've talked about this on the podcast, but like, I want to be that grandma who like is cooking food, and whenever her family pops in, like I drop everything and I just want to be there with my family. Mm-hmm. And I think, anyway, I see that in her future, and I'm like, I just want to learn from her of creating space and margin for my kids to rest, and creating a space that is restful and fun and playful. And I think that was just so good.
Yeah. So guys, we hope you enjoyed it. We'd love to hear from you, what you thought, what your favorite part was. And yeah,
Did you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, I thought it was really good. And I really enjoyed a lot of what she said. And I feel like I love interviewing people. Geez, in my throat.
Justin's struggling lately.
I know. I love interviewing people where I feel like they're 15 or 20 years ahead of where we want to be in some aspects. Like I feel like how they see home, how they've created a home culture, how she creates, some other things. Like I just think we really look up to them. And so, yeah, I was really, really stoked. So guys, we hope you enjoyed it. Let us know on social media if you did, what stood out, all of the above. And we are super, super thankful for you guys listening. Make sure to check out her book. One of the main reasons she was on is her new book, Cozy Minimalist Home. And I don't just mean like go buy it just because go buy it. But honestly, in this interview series, everyone we're interviewing has deeply impacted us from their books and from their beliefs or from kind of their voice and what they talk about and what they are experts on. And she is definitely brilliant and needed in the aspect of home that feels that when you read about it and when you think about what she says, actually fills you with life, not shame, fills you with goodness and grace, not comparison or pressure. And is really, really, really helpful. And so we love you guys and have a good rest of the week.